In the bitter cold of a Minnesotan winter, clashes between protesters and law enforcement bled into the night. This was outside the hotel room of Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, the current public enemy #1 in Minneapolis. News that he was being removed from leading ICE raids in the Midwestern state did little to calm the anger of those living there.
Getting fired is not justice. It's not enough. The man needs to be brought to trial for what he's wrought on Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota.
In a major shift of mood from the White House, some ICE agents will begin to leave the state from today, along with their boss. And in nothing short of a public humiliation, President Trump's hawkish Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, has also been sidelined, and a new sheriff is coming to town. Border czar Tom Homan, who is headed to Minneapolis today for clear-the-air meetings with local Democratic leaders.
Yeah! Come on!
The dramatic turnaround comes after nationwide protests over ICE's actions, particularly the deaths of 2 Americans killed by ICE agents while protesting against the raids.
No!
First, Renee Good, a mother of 3 shot in her car on the 7th of January. The Trump administration called her a domestic terrorist and accused her of trying to run over ICE officers, but phone footage seemed to contradict the claim. The latest killing this weekend of intensive care nurse Alex Pretti, an observer seen filming agents, has inflamed even supporters of President Trump's immigration policies. Mr. Pretti was shot numerous times by an agent who claimed that Pretti intended to massacre federal agents and resisted attempts to disarm him, an accusation repeated by some of the president's closest supporters.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots.
But eyewitnesses, local officials and the victim's family have challenged that account, pointing out Pretti had a phone in his hand, not a weapon. His parents have accused the administration of spreading sickening lies about what happened. For anyone hoping that a change at the top meant a change in approach, the White House press secretary quickly ruled it out.
Mr. Homan will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out.
But the switch in ground personnel was mirrored by a softening of dialogue between the president and Minnesota's Democratic state leaders. After weeks of sharp criticism coming from both parties, Monday's talks were characterized as positive. A sign perhaps that both sides were seeking a way to end their standoff over the president's deportation drive. By sidelining the more controversial antagonists previously leading the raids and bringing back Tom Homan, a man who knows how to get the job done without the violence that stoked massive public anger in recent days, Trump is able to de-escalate without really de-escalating in the eyes of his base.
Joining me now is Jennifer Ewing, who is a spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK. Jennifer, in less than 3 weeks, 2 Americans have been killed by ICE agents. Both were blamed by members of your party for their own deaths. Can you give me your reaction to that, firstly?
Yeah, I mean, I think what has been the problem, quite frankly, and the numbers show it, is that the local and state authorities have not been working with the ICE agents. And when that happens, unfortunately, things like we saw with Mr. Pretti's death a few days ago, which of course is tragic, is that there aren't proper parameters and safety measures put in for people who have the right to peacefully protest. And instead what happens is the ICE agents who are trying to obtain and basically arrest illegal criminals are clashing with the protest. And then because so many people are armed in America, it escalates from there. Again, it was a tragedy. And I think that the good news is overnight you will have seen that the governor, Tim Walz, and President Trump have had a discussion. So hopefully the state and local authorities will cooperate with the federal agents, which has happened in almost every other county in America. That's why Minnesota, which has not done that, has had so many problems.
Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino is said to have been relieved of his role in Minnesota, and Kristi Noem has been sidelined too by the looks of it. This is a major concession from President Trump, isn't it?
If we're trying to put points on the board, you can say it's a concession for Trump, or you could say, it's a concession that Tim Walz finally is allowing, ICE to do their job. However, what I would say is I do not think DHS Secretary Noem's comments immediately after the killing of Alex Pretti were very helpful. She spoke too soon, and to call somebody a domestic terrorist, we didn't know that at the time. We still don't know that. If that comes out to be the case, fine. She spoke too soon. With regards to Greg Bovino, I think this was somewhat strategic. I think they're sending him back to California, which is where he's from. Perhaps there's just too much bad blood between the people of Minneapolis and Mr. Bovino. You'll see that Tom Homan, who is the head of ICE, is stepping in. Hopefully this will be a fresh start. And again, we can do what the people voted for, which is to get illegal criminals, killers, murderers, pedophiles, out of Minneapolis.
President Trump's supposed motivation for this is to make Americans safer. Would you say America is safer today than it was a few weeks ago?
Well, it's not what I would say, it's what's true. We have the lowest level of killings in America since the 1900s. So, the fact that President Trump and his team have deported 600,000 illegal aliens, in addition, which is even better, is 1.8 million people who are here illegally self-deported. And when you self-deport, you have an opportunity to come back into the country legally. So again, not what I say, it absolutely is a safer place.
Do you think the people in Minnesota feel safer?
Well, there's been a lot of very high emotions, in Minnesota, and a lot of this has been done by agitators, quite frankly, who are paid to stir up the situation. So I'm sure the locals do not feel safe from having people who have political agendas or don't like the president of the United States.
I think they probably feel unsafe because 2 protesters have been shot on the streets.
Well, if anybody is looking into these stories, they will see that both of these deaths could have been prevented. It is not like ICE is just randomly going around shooting people. Remember that Alex Pretti, though he didn't deserve to die for it, and he has the right to Second Amendment, he did not tell the agents when they were restraining him that he had a firearm, and it escalated from there.
It's quite something that this event has managed to unite both the NRA, the National Rifle Association, and people on the left. Isn't it a fact that on this gun point that what the administration is saying is wrong? He had, the right to have the gun, as you say, and perhaps in that moment, that wasn't the first thing on his mind.
Well, of course you have the right to have a gun, but anybody who owns a gun, there's different state laws. You need to register your gun. You need to carry ID and your permit, which my understanding is he was not carrying either one. But that aside, it's also just common sense. If you're being restrained by the police, you should disclose, or you need to disclose legally that you are holding a weapon. It's the same thing, with any other situation. These people are law enforcement officers, and you might not like the policy, but Americans overwhelmingly voted for this policy, and now it's been enacted. So if you're going to a peaceful protest, just use better judgment in, not having things escalate into this tragic situation.
It sounds like you're blaming him for his own death again.
I would never blame him for his own death again, but I do believe the death could have been prevented.
A recent poll suggests that over 60% of people think ICE are going too far. What does this mean for President Trump's immigration plans?
Yeah, I've seen that poll too, and it's quite frankly, it's not a surprise to me. If you watch just the average channel media, they make it seem just, kind of like was alluded to earlier, that random people are being shot on the streets of Minneapolis, when that's simply not true. So of course people don't like the way this is playing out, and that's why, you know, they're going to change the way this is happening. And again, I say that this is the places where this is happening are where the two state and federal sides are not working together. And you also have to keep in mind, I mean, CNN, who's hardly, you know, a big cheerleader for Trump, basically took together polls, New York Times, Marquette, I think it was ABC and NBC, between 55% and 67% of Americans agree with the statement that illegal immigrants should be deported. So, you know, again, he's got a mandate to do this.
Jennifer Ewing, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Anya.